Hey everyone, Robert Ferringo with Doc Sports here with your 2020 NFL Las Vegas season win total picks and predictions video for the Baltimore Ravens. Right now, the Ravens over-under season win total number is currently set at 12. I have seen some 11.5s out there, but the general consensus is that the Ravens win total is set at 12. Now, I have said this for years, ever since I have been writing and talking about football, that football is a physical and violent game. It is inherently about being physical and being violent, and the team that is the most physical and the most violent is going to win more times than not. And the Ravens proved that once again to a league that had been, over the last decade, trending towards softer, more pass-happy, more orchestrated offensive approaches. Last year, the Ravens brought a goddamn sledgehammer, and they just absolutely bludgeoned the NFL with it. And I loved it. I loved every single second of it. They overwhelmed teams with their running game and a powerful defense. They went 14-2, which was the best record in the NFL. They had the number 1 overall seed in the AFC. They did flop in the playoffs. The irony of that being that the team they lost to, the Tennessee Titans, beat them at their own game. It was like the first time this year that the Ravens ran into a team that was playing as physically as they had been all year, and they weren't really prepared for it. But let's spin this forward to 2020. What are we going to get out of the Ravens this year? Well, like I mentioned, their win total is set at 12. That's one of the highest on the board with the Kansas City Chiefs. They're on the short list of teams with the best odds to win the Super Bowl. So there's high expectations coming off that 14-win season. However, I don't think people realize just how rare a 14-win season is in the NFL. I actually went back and looked it up. And during the Super Bowl era, so over the last 53 years, there have actually only been 22 teams that have won 14 games in a season. If you add in the teams that won 15 games and the 16-0 New England team, there's actually only been 28 teams in the history of the Super Bowl era NFL that have won 14 or more games. So that's a hell of an accomplishment, and they deserved every bit of it last year. But here's where it gets interesting, okay? There's only been 2 teams, the 1990 San Francisco 49ers and the 2004 New England Patriots, that were able to win 14 games one year and then match that the following season, okay? There is a natural regression, a natural ebb and flow to these things in the NFL, and even those powerhouse, all-time great teams have fallen victim to it. Now, there's only those 2 teams that match 14 wins. Only 2 other teams, 2 Patriot teams of the last 20 years, actually won more than 12 games the next year. There were 2 Patriot teams that won 14 games one year. They won 13 games the next year. So it's only happened 4 times of the 28 teams over the last 53 years that have won 14 or more games that a team has come back and won more than 12 games the following year. And 3 of them were the Patriots. And the Patriots dynasty, as I've talked about, is just beyond comprehension, okay? Like, they are the complete and total outlier, so we can't really use them as a baseline. Now, if we kick out those 4 Patriot teams, the other 18 teams that won 14 games over the last 53 years have averaged 9.7 wins per season the next year. So they've seen their win total drop by more than 4 games on average. Okay, even if we include those Patriot teams in there, and even if we include the teams that won 15 and 16 games, so we take all 28 of those teams, the average win total for those 28 all-time great regular season teams is 10.7 the following year. Okay, so I think you can see where I'm going with this, is that if we're using history as our guide, the odds are that the Ravens are going to have a pretty steep regression this year. And there's some other statistical indicators that I utilize when making these my own futures bets and releasing my futures bets to my clients. Things like their record in close games. Baltimore was 5-1 last year in close games. Their turnover differential, which was +10. That's one of those stats that has a give and take within every season. You know, you have someone like Lamar Jackson who rushed the ball over 170 times last year and is the focal point of that offense, league MVP, because he runs the ball so much, because he exposes himself to so many hits. He's a higher injury risk than a guy like a Tom Brady or a Peyton Manning, whose teams could win 14 games and be reasonably expected to come back and threaten that the next year. So there's a lot of things pointing towards the Ravens coming back to earth, okay? Finally, their schedule is brutal. Their schedule is an absolute bear. You take a look at their November and December. Before their bye week, they have back-to-back rock fights at Philadelphia and with rival Pittsburgh. They have a bye week, and then they have 2 straight road games at Indianapolis and at New England, 2 of the better teams in the AFC. And then they have 3 games after that. Let's see if I get this right. I know they end with Dallas. Prior to the Dallas game, they have to go back to Pittsburgh to play them. And then they have that revenge game with Tennessee. So it goes at Indianapolis, at New England, Tennessee, at Pittsburgh, Dallas. Okay, and that's after the first Pittsburgh and the game at Philadelphia. So their schedule is brutal, okay? It's also difficult to hold up that same level of physicality for multiple seasons. Guys get hurt. Guys wear down. That's just kind of the way it goes in the NFL. So I love the Ravens. Love their roster. Love their franchise. Love their approach to football. Okay? It's my style of football. However, when I'm looking at their season win total this year, the numbers are inflated. And if we use both recent history and the long-term history of the NFL, it's going to be, I don't want to say impossible, because again, a few teams have pulled it off, but nearly impossible or very extraordinarily difficult for them to surpass this year's season win total. So for me, all of the value is taking the Baltimore Ravens under 12 wins. I even like them under 11.5 wins if you can get them on plus money, at like a plus 120, plus 130. I have them finishing right around 10 wins, give or take. They still will be in the playoff mix, but this is going to be a tougher year for the Ravens. So that's it. Take the Ravens under 12 wins. That's it for today. Make sure to check me out at www.docsports. That's docsports.com. In the meantime, carpe diem and good luck.